Under the unforgiving glare of studio lights, the stage gleamed like a polished courtroom, clinical, composed, and built for control. 5 women sat in a curved line of ivory chairs, each perfectly lit, each perfectly briefed. CSB cameras moved like predators on rails, capturing every blink, every breath. The topic was women in power, but the energy was flat, ceremonial, until one voice shattered the calm. Jasmine Crockett. She didn't speak first, but when she did, it was as if the floor had cracked open beneath them. The moderator had just asked, "Do spouses of public officials have a duty to live the values they represent?" A pause. Then Jasmine leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands folded, her voice low but loaded. "You can't cherry-pick the job," she said. "You can't choose the flowers and skip the funeral. You don't get to embrace the pretty parts of a title and vanish when it gets ugly." Her words sliced through the polite air like broken glass. A flicker ran through the crowd, nervous movement, shifting feet, a cough too loud in the back. Jasmine wasn't done. Her gaze was razor-sharp, locked not on the panel, but on the lens straight through to America's living rooms. "We praise visibility," she said, "but where was it when children were screaming in cages? Where was it when mothers were begging not to be separated from their babies? Nowhere. Not a word. Just silence and a green jacket that mocked every pain that passed." The temperature dropped. Offstage, a production assistant muttered into a headset. Panic rising. The screen glitched once, then the feed went black for 8 full seconds. Nothing. No sound, no image, just the C-SPAN logo hanging in dead air. Emergency delay protocols had been triggered, not for profanity, not for scandal, but because truth had been spoken too clearly, too forcefully, too dangerously. When the picture returned, the silence in the studio wasn't technical. It was human. No applause, no rebuttals, just frozen faces. Jasmine sat still, unmoved, unblinking. She hadn't said a name, but everyone knew. The framing, the timing, the green jacket reference, it wasn't just commentary. It was a controlled demolition. She had aimed directly at Melania Trump without ever pulling the trigger, and the impact landed like a missile. While Jasmine's words rippled through the country like a thunderclap, raw, surgical, impossible to ignore, far from the cameras, behind gilded walls and drawn curtains, Melania Trump watched in silence. But this silence wasn't strength. It was pressure building in a sealed room. It was a woman being called out without warning, realizing the world was watching for her reaction. The East Parlor at Mar-a-Lago felt colder than usual, not from air conditioning, but from a tension that had settled like fog. Melania sat perfectly still on a cream velvet chaise, legs crossed, back straight, every inch of her posture designed for control. Yet there was no peace in her eyes. The television before her had no sound, but she didn't need it. The image was burned in, Jasmine Crockett, eyes fierce and calm, speaking without raising her voice, speaking directly through the screen. Her phone buzzed again on the glass table beside her. She didn't look. Notifications had flooded in for 2 hours, texts, missed calls, a message from her cousin in Slovenia that read, "What did you do?" Her reflection caught in the glass tabletop, perfect makeup, perfectly still, but beneath it, something cracked. The unfairness stung, sharp and personal. She hadn't asked for this fight. She hadn't even spoken. And yet now she was being judged for silence, as if silence was a crime. Across from her, her aide, Helena, stood holding a printed transcript, the pages bent from her grip. "We should release something," Helena finally whispered. "Even just a sentence. Remind people who you are." Melania didn't turn her head. "I am who I am. I don't need to explain every time someone throws a stone." "This isn't a stone," Helena said, her tone practical, like someone pointing out a gas leak. "People are watching. They think you're hiding." "Let them," Melania replied, her voice tight. "I don't play their game." She stood and walked to the window, pushing the curtain aside just enough to see the sky, blue, cloudless, mocking. "Every time I speak, they twist it. When I stay quiet, they say I don't care. So which is it? Am I fake when I smile, or cruel when I say nothing?" Her voice didn't rise, but it trembled beneath the surface. Helena sat gently on the edge of a chair. "Maybe it's not about being right anymore. Maybe it's about being seen." Melania let out a slow, tired breath. I never wanted the spotlight, she said softly. I wanted to protect my son. I wanted a quiet life, but he made noise for all of us. And now they expect me to answer for it. She looked Helena dead in the eyes. No, I won't respond. I don't need to fight someone I've never met just to prove I have a heart. But outside that room, her team wasn't so calm. In the West Wing, aides whispered urgently in hallways. One staffer had drafted 3 different responses, none were approved. A media consultant warned, if she doesn't say something by tonight, she'll lose control of the narrative. Her public silence, once seen as poise, was starting to look like avoidance. While Melania stood behind marble walls, the outside world erupted, not in whispers, but in firestorms. It started as a flicker, a 22-second clip posted by a college sophomore captioned, "She didn't lie." She didn't even flinch. Within minutes, it crossed platforms, shared to TikTok, clipped for X, uploaded to YouTube by a streamer who called it, the most brutally honest takedown of First Lady culture we've ever seen. The algorithm swallowed it whole. Hashtags pulsed like warning lights, hashtag be best but silent, hashtag Crockett and silence, hashtag she's peaks. Across phones and laptops, in cafes and kitchens, millions stared at Jasmine Crockett mid-sentence, lips pressed in firm resolve, saying what they'd screamed in private for years. She didn't shout. She didn't blink. And in doing so, she made the world listen. By noon, the clip was translated into 6 languages. TikTok creators layered the audio over footage of protests, crying children at detention centers, slow-motion shots of Melania in the infamous green jacket. On Reddit, a post titled, "This is what leadership looks like," climbed to the top of r/politics. On Instagram, influencers quoted Jasmine word for word, "You can't pick the flowers and ignore the roots." This wasn't just virality, it was a collective exhale. A generation told to be polite, to stay in their lane, watched one of their own tear the lane wide open. Jasmine hadn't attacked with emotion, she had sliced with truth. And the silence that followed wasn't fear, it was recognition. The reaction wasn't limited to the left. Conservative women shared the clip in private groups. This isn't about politics. It's about the difference between showing up and checking out. Former Republican staffers liked Jasmine's words from anonymous accounts. One anchor broke script on air, saying softly, "Whatever you think of the Congresswoman, she told the truth, and the truth doesn't flinch." But the most powerful impact came from people who never followed politics. A factory worker stitched Jasmine's quote into a jacket for his daughter. A single mom recorded a reaction video through tears. "I was one of those moms Jasmine talked about. I stayed quiet at my job when they called us, just cleaning ladies. Never again." People weren't just reposting, they were remembering every moment they'd bitten their tongue to survive. Watching Jasmine, they felt permission to question, to call out the beautiful silence that covered years of ugliness. The clip hit 10 million views before sunset. It wasn't a speech, it was a spark. And as the fire spread, something deeper unraveled. The traditional mold of the First Lady, graceful, reserved, politically untouched, was held up to the light and torn apart. Girls in debate clubs, moms in minivans, students in dorms asked aloud, "Why did we ever accept quiet as grace? Why did we ever confuse decoration with dignity?" Jasmine hadn't just challenged Melania Trump, she had challenged the very foundation of performative elegance. As dusk fell, the clip played on a wall at a college protest in Chicago. A chant broke out, rhythmic like gospel, "You want the praise, take the pressure. You want the title, carry the weight." From Washington to Wichita, the message spread like wildfire wrapped in clarity. While the world argued over Jasmine's words and Melania's silence, a young journalist named Theo quietly opened a file no one was supposed to see, and unearthed a truth buried alive. Theo was 28, underpaid, under-addicted to the truth. His desk was a mess of legal pads and gum wrappers, a cracked monitor, a handwritten quote pinned to the wall, "Facts don't flinch." He was following an unrelated thread when he stumbled into an unindexed archive of internal First Lady communications. Most was fluff, talking points for garden tours, Christmas decor approvals. He almost skipped a file labeled LSWC_draft_V3_June_22_2018. But habit made him open it. The first lines were diplomatic, standard lines about compassion and shared humanity. Then something shifted. The sentences turned bolder, Asterisk, the policy of separating children from their parents at the border contradicts the fundamental values of this nation. It is cruel and it must stop. Asterisk, Theo stopped scrolling. This read like something personal, something felt. A paragraph later, the language intensified. Asterisk, as a mother, I cannot look away. This practice causes irreparable trauma. No political outcome justifies such suffering. Asterisk, but what made his breath catch was the handwritten note scribbled beneath it in thick black ink, angry in its pressure. Asterisk, do not send. He won't allow it. Asterisk. Theo sat back slowly. Melania Trump, accused for years of indifference, had tried to speak up, and someone had stopped her. The metadata checked out. The formatting was authentic. The handwriting matched her known script. He called his editor and read the note over the phone. A long silence. Then, if this is real, it changes everything. It's real, Theo said. I've verified it 6 ways. But something about the system's neatness felt wrong, too clean, too final. And in journalism, when a story ends too perfectly, it usually means there's another hidden underneath. He didn't know it yet, but what he was about to find would be bigger, riskier, and far more explosive. Another folder, buried deep, opened slowly as if the system didn't want it read. When the text appeared, he stopped breathing. The first sentence stunned him. Asterisk, in times of deep pain, silence is not elegance. It is abandonment. Asterisk, the line didn't sound like politics, it sounded like someone had finally broken. The speech was dated early June 2020, just days after George Floyd's murder. Melania had written about the need to listen to Black communities with humility, acknowledging that choosing silence during injustice was a betrayal of her platform. She wrote plainly, asterisk, peace is not the absence of protest. Peace is the presence of justice. Asterisk. And then the red ink in the margins, from an internal communications director, asterisk, too strong, too political. POTUS will object. Asterisk, and beneath it, the worst word, asterisk, delete. Asterisk. Theo leaned back, heart pounding. This wasn't a delay, it was a deliberate erasure. In the middle of national heartbreak, Melania had tried to speak, and they shut her down again. The woman accused of coldness had drafted some of the strongest language on racial justice any First Lady had ever written, and it never reached the podium. Now he understood the full weight of the silence Jasmine Crockett had railed against. It wasn't always chosen. Sometimes it was enforced, weaponized, covered in red ink. The injustice wasn't just that the speech was killed, it was that no one ever knew it existed. The world judged her based on what she didn't say. Theo backed the file up immediately, 3 copies, 1 encrypted, 1 printed, 1 sent to his editor under the subject line, "This is the second one, and it's worse." As Theo's revelations tore through headlines, Jasmine Crockett didn't hold a press conference. She walked into her kitchen, turned on her phone, and did what no one else seemed brave enough to do. She told the truth plainly, without permission and without polish. There was no script, just Jasmine standing in her Dallas apartment, hoodie slightly wrinkled, face bare. The light above the stove flickered. She took a deep breath, then spoke with the exhausted honesty of someone done watching powerful people get erased behind decorum. "I keep hearing that I went too far," she began, voice steady but low, "that I should have chosen my words more carefully, that I crossed a line." She tilted her head, eyes sharp. "But nobody wants to talk about the line we already crossed the moment kids were crying in cages, and no one with power said a damn thing." She leaned forward, hand resting on the counter. If the First Lady of the United States couldn't speak her mind, if she was told to shut up, sit down, smile for the Christmas tree, then what chance does my mama have? She paused. "My mother was a school nurse for 30 years. A damn good one. I watched her stand there while angry parents screamed in her face during COVID. Called her a liar, a sheep, a threat. She didn't scream back. She didn't quit. She went back to work the next day because that's what we do. We survive. We swallow it." Jasmine's voice cracked for a moment. "She told me once, being right doesn't always protect you. Sometimes it makes you a target. And I've carried that for years." Then came the words that would be quoted for days, printed on posters, spray-painted on walls: silence is not neutral. Silence is choosing a side. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. We keep acting like staying quiet makes us polite, makes us noble. No, it makes us complicit. If you saw kids locked in chain-link cages and said nothing, if you watched women being mocked and stayed silent, if you disappeared every time things got ugly but showed up for the photo op, then you made a choice. And that choice had consequences. She blinked hard. I'm not mad at Melania. I'm mad at a system that told her, you're only allowed to speak if your words protect the powerful. A final line, whispered but sharp as glass, if they can shut her up, what do you think they've already done to the rest of us? She tapped stop. The video hit 2.6 million views in under 12 hours, but the real impact showed up where the algorithm couldn't measure. In an Ohio diner, a waitress passed her phone to a cook. Watch this. She's saying what you were yelling about last week. In a break room in Fresno, a janitor whispered, I didn't even know we were allowed to talk like that. A bus driver in D.C. reposted with the caption, I've been quiet for 17 years. Not anymore. Jasmine's words didn't feel like a viral moment, they felt like a breach, a crack in the dam. Her kitchen looked like theirs. Her mother sounded like theirs. Her frustration wasn't polished, it was the kind of truth that sat on your chest and refused to move. After the kitchen video shattered the line between public silence and private survival, the noise outside only grew louder. But inside Mar-a-Lago, something broke. For the first time, Melania Trump didn't issue a press release. She picked up her phone and dialed the number that scared her most. The phone buzzed in Jasmine Crockett's hand just past 10:17 p.m. The screen flashed unknown caller. She almost let it go, but something told her to answer. Hello. A pause, then a voice softer than she remembered, but unmistakably direct, this is Melania Trump. Jasmine stood up, suddenly wide awake. I assume you've seen the video. I have, Melania replied, calm but not emotionless. That's why I'm calling. The silence between them was thick. Then Melania continued, slower, I don't hate you, Congresswoman. I hate the truth you said out loud. Jasmine sat back down. I didn't say it to hurt you. I said it because it was real, because too many of us don't get to sit in silence and still be safe. Melania exhaled, a faint tremor in her voice. You said I disappeared, that I only showed up for photo ops, that I chose image over responsibility. Jasmine cut in gently but firmly, I didn't name you. But if the shoe fits, maybe it's time to stop blaming the mirror. Melania didn't respond right away. On the other end, she was pacing, gripping the edge of a marble table. I wanted to speak, she finally said. There were drafts, words I wrote. They told me it wasn't my place, that I'd embarrass the office. Her voice tightened. And I listened. I listened because I was raised not to challenge the men I married, because I thought silence was strength. Jasmine's tone deepened. And how many women paid the price for that silence, Melania? How many mothers, how many daughters saw you standing next to cruelty and thought, maybe kindness is just decoration? For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Melania whispered, you embarrassed me. Not because you lied, but because you said the thing I couldn't. Jasmine didn't soften. I don't need you to agree with me. I need you to understand why I couldn't be quiet, why silence felt like betrayal. Melania said nothing, but the absence of protest spoke volumes. Jasmine continued, lower now, you had a platform. So did I. But only one of us got to use it without being told we were too loud, too angry, too much. Melania's reply was almost a confession, I wasn't strong enough. Jasmine didn't flinch. Strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to speak even when you are. Another silence, heavier, more intimate. I didn't call to fix this, Melania said quietly. I know I can't erase what wasn't said. But I wanted to hear it from you, unfiltered. Not from a tweet, not from a clip. Just from you, Jasmine. Jasmine let that land. Then hear this, she said finally. It was never just about you. It was about a system that teaches women to smile through pain, that makes silence look like class and honesty look like rage. The call didn't end with forgiveness. There were no promises, no fake unity, just two women holding the weight of their choices in a conversation neither expected but both needed. And when Jasmine hung up, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt the ache of truth, that strange mixture of justice and sorrow. Not a victory, but a reckoning. The phone call didn't end in harmony, but it cracked something open. And sometimes the first crack is all it takes for light to break through. The auditorium at the Columbus Community Center wasn't meant for national moments. It had peeling paint, humming lights, and the smell of old coffee. But that morning, it felt like something bigger. Nearly 200 people filled the room: teachers, nurses, students, retired women with folded lawn chairs. Jasmine had been speaking for 15 minutes, pulling nods and quiet gasps. "We're told to keep our heads down," she said, voice echoing. "That rage makes us unlikable. That truth makes us impolite. But if you've ever been the only woman in the room trying to hold it all together, then you know quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means prison." That's when the back doors opened. At first, no one recognized her. The lights in the back were dim, her coat plain and gray. She walked without security, without a smile. But when she stepped into the light, a gasp rippled through the room like cold air under a door. Jasmine turned, her sentence trailing off. People stood, not out of applause, but because no one wanted to be caught sitting if this moment meant something. And it did. Melania Trump didn't say a word as she walked down the aisle. She didn't meet every eye, but she didn't avoid them either. She moved like a woman carrying something heavy: grief, shame, maybe just truth that had taken too long to name. Jasmine stood still, gripping the podium. A staffer moved to intercept Melania halfway up the steps. Jasmine shook her head once. "Let her through." A second mic was handed to Melania without ceremony. She didn't take the stage like a guest, she took it like someone returning to a place she never expected to stand. For several seconds, she said nothing. The room held its breath. Then she spoke, low, almost too soft for the mic to catch. "For years," she began, her accent unvarnished, "I chose safety. I chose silence. I chose to wait, to smile, to pretend I was not drowning." She paused, swallowed. "But today, I choose truth." The sound of a single person standing echoed from the back. Then another. Then another. The room didn't erupt, it rose slowly with reverence, with tears. A teacher in the third row covered her mouth. A social worker clutched the hand of the woman next to her. Jasmine remained still, her eyes fixed on Melania, not as an adversary, not as an ally, but as a witness. Melania's voice grew stronger. "You may not forgive my silence. That is fair. I do not ask you to. But I came here today not to rewrite the past. I came because I have spent too long letting others speak for me, and I have paid for it, quietly, alone." She turned slightly, facing Jasmine. "What you said hurt because it was true. I wasn't erased by you. I was erased long before. And for once, I want to be the one who shows up, not for photos, not for approval, but for truth." Still, Jasmine didn't speak. But her hand, slow and deliberate, rested on the podium beside Melania's. They didn't embrace. They didn't pose. But the image froze in every heart in the room: two women who had once stood worlds apart, now standing shoulder to shoulder, not in agreement, but in defiance of silence. And for one quiet, suspended moment, the whole room stood with them, not because they were told to, but because it felt like history was being rewritten, not in policy, not in power, but in presence. The photograph of Jasmine Crockett and Melania Trump standing side by side spread faster than any soundbite could. It wasn't just an image, it was a rupture. And within hours, that rupture became a reckoning far beyond Ohio, far beyond politics. By sunrise, the image was everywhere, on front pages, Instagram stories, cable news tickers. Neither woman smiled. That was what made it striking: no choreography, no scripted embrace. Just two women, one forged in fire, the other freed by it, standing shoulder to shoulder, unflinching. The public response was immediate and overwhelming, not just in clicks, but in voice memos, handwritten letters, classroom debates. A retired librarian posted, "I'm 76. I've waited a lifetime to see two women stand in truth without one being erased." A college senior tweeted, "This is the kind of womanhood I was raised for. Not perfection. Just courage." Then came the former first ladies. Michelle Obama broke the silence first with a single post: "Asterisk, sometimes silence is survival, but it should never be permanent." Asterisk Hillary Clinton wrote an op-ed titled, When Your Voice Costs You. Laura Bush released a rare message, asterisk, even in silence, we feel the weight of what we cannot say. Sometimes the cost of being First Lady is not dignity, it's your voice. Asterisk. What followed wasn't just media frenzy, it was a movement, one defined not by party, but by a shared ache finally spoken aloud. On TikTok, creators started a campaign, #SpeakEvenIfYouShake. Universities held voice circles, safe spaces where women could say what they'd buried under years of trying to be agreeable. Through it all, Jasmine kept moving, town halls, youth centers, legal clinics. Her voice, the same one that had echoed in her kitchen, remained calm but cutting. But something had shifted. When she entered a room, the room leaned in. Teachers greeted her with tears. Girls waited hours just to say thank you. The story leaves us with a countdown disguised as an invitation. What will you say before the next muzzle finds you? Injustice is already writing new scripts, drafting fresh ways to dress silence as sophistication. But this moment armed you with a counterspell, truth said aloud, over and over, until the lie loses its echo. You don't need a podium. You need intent. You don't need 1 million followers. You need one sentence that terrifies complacency. You don't need permission. You need breath. And you already have that. If you remember nothing else, remember the feeling, that heat, that tremor, that unstoppable rise of I could have been louder. It is a fuse waiting for your spark. Jasmine's final words echo into the darkness, not as comfort, but as command, asterisk, it is never too late to raise your voice, and never too late to learn how to listen. Asterisk. Whatever you do next, whisper it, shout it, sing it, just don't let the silence write your story.